What could possibly shock the world's most beloved couple right after welcoming their baby? Just weeks after giving birth, Kim Woo-bin and Shin Min-ah have dropped news so unexpected that it's left fans across the globe in absolute disbelief. Whispers are spreading. Rumors are building. And the truth behind their sudden announcement might change everything we thought we knew about them. Join Red Carpet Revealed as we dive deep into this breaking story, uncovering the emotion, the mystery, and the secret everyone's talking about. What could possibly make one of Korea's most adored couples break their silence only weeks after welcoming a child into the world? The question hung over Seoul like a thundercloud. It began with a single notification, an unexpected press release stamped with two names that needed no introduction, Kim Woo-bin and Shin Min-ah. At first, fans assumed it was a message of joy. Perhaps a glimpse into their new life as parents. A tender thank you to the millions who had showered them with congratulations. But as journalists opened the document, a wave of disbelief rippled across newsrooms and social media alike. The statement was brief, heartbreakingly brief. Moments in life when love and responsibility take us in new directions. We hope for your understanding as we make this decision together. That was it. No elaboration, no context. No comforting emojis or warm explanations. Just 30 words that shattered the serene image the world had built around them. Within minutes, the headline spread like wildfire. Kim Woo-bin and Shin Min-ah announced shocking decision weeks after birth. The couple who had come to symbolize devotion, survival, and grace had once again done the unthinkable, but this time, no one knew what it meant. At dawn, camera crews gathered outside their home in Hanam-dong. Rain glazed the cobblestones. Huddled under umbrellas. Lights flickered through mist. The only sound was the distant click of shutters and the low hum of confusion. Inside, somewhere behind the drawn curtains, the couple remained unseen. For days, they said nothing. But the silence spoke louder than any statement ever could. To understand why the world reacted with such intensity, as to remember who they were, and what they had endured to reach this point. Kim Woo-bin and Shin Min-ah had not simply been celebrities. They had been a symbol of resilience, of unwavering love in the face of pain. When Kim Woo-bin was diagnosed with cancer years earlier, it was Shin Min-ah who stood beside him. Quietly, faithfully. When most of the industry turned its back, she halted her own projects, rejecting glamorous offers, and accompanied him through treatment, shielding him from the glare of tabloids. Theirs was not a love built for headlines. It was a love that survived them. When Woo-bin finally returned to the screen, thinner but sharper, his performance carried a different weight. His eyes, once bright, boyish, now carried depth, sorrow, and a quiet gratitude. Shin Min-ah, always radiant, had become his mirror, a woman who'd seen life's cruelest tests and still smiled through them. When they announced their marriage, it felt less like an event and more like a reward life finally allowed them. The public adored them, the perfect couple that had known pain, endured it, and emerged unbroken. Then came the pregnancy announcement. It was gentle, modest, almost shy, a reflection of who they were. Fans rejoiced. They deserve all the happiness in the world. People wrote online. After everything, this is their miracle. And for a moment, it truly was. Those final weeks before the birth were a portrait of peace. Shin Min-ah disappeared from the spotlight. Woo-bin was seen leaving small grocery stores late at night, carrying flowers and simple meals. The air around them felt soft, fragile, like a fairy tale no one wanted to disturb. When their daughter was born, the news broke with tenderness. No photos, no hospital statements, just a note confirming both mother and baby were healthy. The world smiled with them. Then something strange began. Reporters noticed Woo-bin traveling alone, always late at night. Paparazzi snapped him outside a private clinic, his face pale, drawn. The gossip column speculated about postpartum complications, but the agency brushed it off as routine checkups. Soon after, his social media went dark. It was as though the couple had disappeared from the map. Until the statement arrived, the public's reaction was a storm. What decision? What happened? Fans cried out online. Within hours, forums filled with theories: divorce, health issues, relocation, even secret adoption. Each theory more desperate than the last. One entertainment insider fanned the flames, claiming the couple had been under immense pressure from the media, that Woo-bin wanted to leave the industry permanently, while Shin Min-ah was torn between her career and motherhood. Another source whispered that the decision wasn't about them at all, but about something they had discovered. The speculation bordered on hysteria. TV panels dissected their marriage. Body language experts analyzed old interviews, while fan communities turned into battlegrounds. Yet amid the chaos, one detail kept resurfacing: the look in Woo Bin's eyes during his last public appearance, tired, distant, like a man carrying something too heavy to share. World's all glamour. They lived the cost. Those close to the couple described the days after the baby's birth as strangely quiet. Friends who visited the hospital said Shin Min-ah barely left her room, her gaze often fixed on the small crib beside her. Woo Bin, they said, stayed at her side constantly, but he wasn't smiling. He looked scared. One friend recalled. Not for her, but for what came after. Something had happened after the delivery, something no one outside the walls of that hospital knew. 2 weeks later, the couple moved out of their sole home, reportedly to a rented villa by the coast. Supposed to be temporary. Yet they never came back. The villa's neighbors described them as polite but distant. They took late-night walks, avoided visitors, and often watched the ocean in silence. No cars, no assistance. No sign of the glamour that once defined their lives. Then, on a rainy evening, a delivery worker claimed to have heard them arguing softly, voices muffled, urgent. He didn't hear the words. Only a sentence that chilled him. "We can't hide this forever." Later came the announcement. The vague message only deepened the mystery. Even veteran journalists couldn't decode it. The tone wasn't mournful, it was resolute. Almost like closure. An entertainment host summed it up perfectly during a late-night broadcast. It's not what they were saying. It's what they're not saying that scares everyone. That night, under the glow of screens across Asia, a single photo began circulating, a blurry image taken near a private airport. It showed Woo Bin holding a small travel bag, Shin Min-ah wrapped in a coat, their newborn bundled in a blanket. They looked neither sad nor frightened, just done. It became an instant icon, the final scene of a love story the world wasn't ready to let end. By the third day, silence gave way to leaks. A journalist from Seoul Mirror Daily claimed to have spoken with a source close to the family. The quote went viral. "They're leaving everything behind." It sounded too dramatic to believe. Yet the phrase stuck like a curse. Another insider added fuel to the fire. They've seen too much of what this industry really is. Fame stopped feeling like a dream a long time ago. Soon, fans began uncovering strange coincidences. Old interviews resurfaced, showing Woo Bin speaking cryptically about peace and starting over. He once told a host, "If I could live quietly by the sea, that would be my perfect ending." Had they been preparing this farewell all along? Public opinion split in two. Some fans defended them fiercely. They've earned the right to disappear. Let them be happy. Others felt betrayed. You can't just walk away after everything. We supported you. We waited for you. Meanwhile, their management agency struggled to contain the firestorm. Representatives released a careful statement insisting that both actors were healthy and focusing on family matters. But the wording only raised more questions. Health. Family matters. Direction. The public knew that coded language well. In Korea's entertainment world, it often meant scandal, sickness, or retirement. Yet this felt different. Something about the tone, calm, deliberate, unapologetic, made it sound like a decision long in the making. Weeks passed with no further word. The villa by the sea became the center of global curiosity. Journalists drove by in unmarked cars. Phones hovered above. Fans left letters at the gate. The couple didn't respond. But one night, as the waves crashed against the shore, a local resident posted something on social media that reignited the frenzy. It was a simple photo taken from afar, a silhouette of two figures standing near the cliff, hand in hand. The wind carrying Shin Min-ah's hair like a flame. Caption read, "They looked peaceful. Like they were saying goodbye." The post gained 1 million views in hours. The next morning, the villa was empty. Investigators confirmed the couple had checked out of their lease early. Their belongings were shipped discreetly to an unknown address. The agency declined all comment. Then, quietly, both of their names disappeared from upcoming project listings. Contracts were voided. Campaigns were cancelled. Fans begged for clarity. But the silence grew thicker, heavier, until it became its own kind of truth. Online, theories hardened into legends. Said they'd moved abroad to raise their child in peace. Others whispered they'd joined humanitarian work under false names. A few claimed they'd gone somewhere unreachable, where cameras couldn't follow. The truth remained as fragile as the waves that had erased their footprints. By the end of that month, their story had evolved from gossip to myth. Magazines printed retrospectives titled The Love That Chose Freedom. YouTubers created hour-long documentaries filled with speculation, cinematic slow motion, soft piano music. Every frame of their past was reinterpreted through the lens of tragedy and all. But behind the noise, a few fragments of reality slipped through. A local photographer from Jeju posted a picture of a man and woman buying groceries at a seaside market, both wearing hats and masks. The caption, "They looked like any other couple." Their eyes were the same ones I'd seen on screen. But them? No one could prove it. But everyone wanted to believe it was. Some stories burn brightly and vanish. Others, like theirs, refuse to fade. Because what Kim Woo-bin and Shin Min-ah had done wasn't simply disappear, they had broken the illusion of endless availability that fame demands. They had reminded the world that even the most glamorous lives are built on human exhaustion, fear, and longing for peace. The final echo of their presence came from a single email sent to select journalists from an anonymous address. No signature. Just a line. "Not gone. We're just where the noise can't reach us." That was the last message ever linked to their names. Weeks later, the world still buzzes with unanswered questions. Fans keep refreshing feeds, hoping for one last post, one photo, one sign of life. But perhaps this silence is their answer. Maybe the most shocking news of all wasn't a scandal, or a tragedy, or a confession. Maybe it was a choice. A choice to step away. To live without headlines. To raise a child in a world that no longer confuses privacy with secrecy. Theirs is not a story of escape. It's a story of courage, the kind that doesn't need applause to exist. And somewhere, on a quiet coast, under a sky untouched by flashlights, a baby laughs. The sea keeps their secret. For now. The headlines had faded. But the silence had not. Turned into months. And the world adjusted to their absence as one adjusts to a wound that never quite heals, slowly, reluctantly. Still flinching at the slightest touch? Every now and then, their names would flicker back into the trending list. Attached to rumors too vague to chase, spotted in Bali. Seen at an art cafe in Jeju. Neighbor swears they live nearby. Nothing ever confirmed. Nothing ever denied. But beneath the surface, a different kind of story began to unfold, quieter, deeper. One that couldn't fit into headlines. A year after their disappearance, an independent journalist named Park Han-il published a long-form piece titled "The Choice of Two Stars." It wasn't gossip. It was an investigation born from empathy, pieced together through whispers, private interviews, and the kind of persistence that borders on obsession. What she found was not scandal, not betrayal, but something far more human. The story began in the hospital. After the birth, the baby had arrived early, not dangerously so. Enough to shake their sense of safety. Shin Min-ah, pale and exhausted, was recovering from complications that left her bedridden. Woo-bin was there every second, holding her hand, refusing to sleep. Staff described him as polite but haunted, as if his mind was somewhere far beyond the walls of that sterile room. It wasn't the birth that frightened him. It was what came after. The couple had long known that fame is not a crown, it's a cage. They'd endured it for years. Endless scrutiny, the expectations, the false intimacy the world demanded. But becoming parents changed everything. Suddenly, the cage had another occupant, a tiny, fragile life that had never asked for any of it. Min-ah's postpartum depression set in quietly, almost invisibly. She smiled for the nurses, thanked the fans who sent gifts. But the light in her eyes dimmed. Woo-bin noticed. He saw her staring at the baby with love and fear in equal measure. One night, she whispered, "What if she never knows us without the cameras?" That was the moment the idea took root. They didn't decide overnight. It was a series of small choices, unspoken glances, late-night conversations that stretched into dawn. And would walk the hospital corridors with his newborn sleeping against his chest, thinking about the life he wanted for her, not the one the world expected. One morning, when Shin Min-ah finally had the strength to sit up, he sat beside her and said softly, "Stop pretending this is happiness." She didn't answer right away. She just stared out the window, where sunlight spilled across the city skyline, That glittering, relentless machine that had given them everything and taken even more. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, certain. Then let's leave before it takes her too. And so, they began to disappear. At first, their team resisted. Their agencies begged them to reconsider, reminding them of contracts, endorsements, fans who loved them like family. The couple had already made their decision. Woo Bin bought out his remaining contracts, transferring most of his assets into trust for his child. Shin Min-ah quietly donated her earnings to hospitals and charities under an alias. They weren't running from fame, they were dismantling it. Still, one question haunted them: how to say goodbye without saying too much? That's where the statement came from, that short, pragmatic message that left the world stunned. It was their farewell, carefully worded to protect what they were leaving behind. They knew the public would speculate. They knew the media would feast. But they also knew there was no right way to leave a life built on constant visibility. Private, Woo Bin wrote one last letter to his fans, a letter that never reached the public. In it, he confessed his fear of losing his humanity to the roles he played, of raising a daughter in a world that values appearance over peace. For years, I lived through characters who were strong, beautiful, untouchable. But I forgot what it felt like to just be human. Now, I want to learn that again, with her. With Min-ah, in silence. For nearly 6 months after the announcement, no one knew where they were. Until one day, a fisherman on Jeju Island told a quiet story to a local paper. He spoke of a small house hidden among the cliffs, overlooking the sea. A man and woman lived there with a baby, simple, polite, always together. The man helped him repair his boat once. The woman painted on the porch in the evenings. They looked like people who had finally exhaled, he said. No one connected the dots, not at first. A local grocer posted a photo of a customer's hand-drawn receipt with the name Min-ah Kim scrawled in delicate writing. People began to wonder. Soon after, the grocer deleted the post, saying, "Just one piece. Let's give it to them." For once, the internet agreed. Time softened the frenzy. The entertainment industry, ever hungry for new faces, moved on. New stars rose. New scandals fed the cycle. Occasionally, during interviews, someone would mention them, always with a wistful tone. Directors spoke of Woo Bin's quiet strength. Actors called Shin Min-ah the definition of grace. They didn't leave because they fell. One producer said, they left because they'd already won. Came a letter, handwritten, unmarked, sent to a journalist who had covered their story from the beginning. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was unmistakable. "Thank you for caring. Stop looking for us. We are not lost, we're finally found." The journalist framed it, never published it, and kept the secret until her retirement. 2 years later, another ripple reached the surface. A small art exhibition opened in Busan, casing works by an anonymous painter known only as Luna. The paintings was one titled "The Sea Remembers Us," depicted two figures walking along a shoreline, a small child between them, their reflections stretching across the wet sand. Critics praised its emotion, its simplicity. But those who knew Shin Min-ah's early sketches recognized the brushstrokes instantly. "She's still creating," a fan whispered online. "Just quietly now." Soon after, another discovery appeared, a charity fund under Kim Woo Bin's name, dedicated to providing medical care for low-income families. Its slogan was short, poignant: "Healing doesn't end when the lights go off." It's clear they hadn't vanished to escape the world, just redefined what it meant to live in it. The real shock came 3 years later, during a major award ceremony. A tribute segment honored past icons who had changed the landscape of Korean cinema. As clips of famous actors rolled across the screen, music shifted, and suddenly, an unseen voice began to speak. "We thank everyone who loved us when we chose silence." Some stories are meant to end under applause, with a whisper. Both are beautiful. All went completely still. No name appeared, but everyone knew. It was Kim Woo Bin's voice. Recorded, gentle, final. By the end of the broadcast, social media had erupted again, but this time, the tone was different. There were no angry debates, no desperate searches, only tears, gratitude, and the quiet realization that maybe, for once, the story didn't need to continue. What they had done wasn't rebellion. It was reclamation. In a world obsessed with access, they reclaimed privacy. In an industry addicted to spectacle, they reclaimed simplicity. In lives built for others, they reclaimed themselves. Their absence became their greatest statement, that love can exist without witnesses. That happiness doesn't need validation. That sometimes the bravest act is to stop performing. People often asked, but what about the fans? Did they owe them an explanation? Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But perhaps the better question was this: what do we owe the people we love when love itself becomes public property? The answer, as they lived it, was simple: honesty and distance. Today, their story lives not in gossip columns, but in whispers, like folklore passed from one heart to another. In soul cafes, you still hear their names spoken with reverence. By size. On the internet, old clips of them together resurface every year on their anniversary, set to piano music and candle emojis. And somewhere, in a small coastal town, rumors of a family who walks the shore at sunset, a tall man, a woman with a sketchbook, a little girl chasing the tide. No cameras, no scripts, no lies. Just life. Years later, a filmmaker released a documentary called The Ones Who Left. It wasn't about them directly, not officially. But everyone knew. The film opened with a line that felt carved from their story. Love chooses silence. The world must learn to listen differently. It won awards across festivals, praised for its quiet power. The final scene was what left the audience breathless, a slow pan over an empty beach. The sound of waves rising. Her voice this time, whispering, "We're still here." The screen faded to black. No credits rolled. No names appeared. Just the reflection of water shimmering like memory. Their child would grow up never knowing the meaning of fame. Seeing her parents' faces on billboards. Never understanding why strangers once cried at the mention of their names. And maybe that was the point. Every generation needs a legend, and sometimes the greatest legends are the ones who walk away before the world ruins them. Kim Woo-bin and Shin Min-ah didn't vanish. They transformed. From icons to humans. From characters to parents. From headlines to whispers. Their story isn't about loss, it's about freedom. The kind most people dream of but are too afraid to take. And though the cameras have long been turned off, their love remains, alive in the wind, the sea. Hearts of those who watch them leave. Not with tragedy, but with peace. In the end, it wasn't a scandal. And a secret. It was a beginning, one that didn't need lights, red carpets, or applause. Two people, a child, and the courage to start again. The headlines moved on. But their story stayed, not in breaking news or trending tags, but in the soft places where memory lingers. Some stories burn bright and vanish, others fade slowly. Like an ember that never dies. Theirs is the latter, a story that whispers instead of shouts. That reminds us love doesn't need witnesses to exist. When the cameras went dark, the world gasped. For Kim Woo-bin and Shin Min-ah, that was the moment life truly began, unedited, unseen, unburdened. Applause had always been for the characters they played. This, finally, was for themselves. Maybe that's why people still talk about them, not because they disappeared, but because they dared to. They became the mirror through which we see our own hunger for escape. Our longing to choose peace over perfection. The world learns something rare from them. That endings aren't always tragedies. Silence can be an act of love. And that the bravest thing two people can do is walk away from the noise together. If someday you find yourself standing before the sea, hear laughter carried by the wind, maybe it's them. Maybe it's the sound of two souls who finally learned how to live quietly, completely, and freely. Thank you to those who believed in their story. Thank you to those who let them go. And to Kim Woo-bin and Shin Min-ah, proving that love doesn't end when the spotlight fades. It becomes real.